And welcome to Programme 4 of the Ed Files.
Happy New Year to you, Leon. How are you?
Happy New Year to you. I'm very well indeed.
You're looking well.
I am. I'm feeling quite good. It's because I've been keeping up my New Year's resolutions, which we'll be into later in the programme. So let's just give a little preamble about what we're going to talk about this week. I'll hand that over to you.
Okay, a few things, I think. I've forgotten everything that happened in 2016, so I have no follow-up, I don't think. We're just going to wipe the slate clean and start from 2017 like we mean to go on. So no talk about June the 23rd. Brexit? What Brexit? No talk about December and the fateful month that was December. Trump presidency? What Trump presidency? We don't know anything about that. We're just going to talk about all the wonderful things that are happening in our lives and education. So, first thing we're going to talk about is John Tomsit's new book, which is This Much I Know About Mind Over Matter. His new book is about mental health in schools. We're also going to talk about a little bit on AI in education, just a bit of a chat about that. We're going to have a chit-chat about knowledge organisers. I might discuss my New Year's resolutions with you, Leon. I have a feeling you're being better at yours than I am at mine. Bit of AI pondering. And another thing I noticed as well, the 1987 curriculum, there's been some discussions about that recently.
Oh, yes, I saw
that. Yeah, so we'll have a little chat about history memorabilia from 1987. And you've also noted that we've got a new person at the helm of Ofsted's. So
yes, Amanda Spielman's first comments, which were in the Telegraph. In fact, I looked at two things. It looks like I'm a Telegraph reader, which I'm not. One was Amanda Spielman's first comments they reported on, and the second one is Rachel de Souza's piece.
Right, okay.
Which had interesting repercussions for me. And also, we've got Carpet Time, and it's Emma Shepherd who's going to be reviewing Doug Lemov's Teach Like a Champion 2.0.
And the last thing I'm going to talk about at the end, I've got a few audio vox pops from the ASE conference, only a few recordings, but we'll have a little chat at the end of the podcast about that.
Right, well, let's move on to John Tomsit's new book, because I've seen it advertised. It's coming out in March, and I think we're going to get it.
No, it says out in March, but apparently it's out this week. This is the usual publishers hedging their bets, setting a date, but apparently it's out this week. When I say preview, I haven't read it yet. I haven't seen it apart from the whatever's online. But John Tomsit is basically, this is his second major education book. The first one was it was a fascinating, almost biography, and his life as a head teacher. Really good book. This second one is Mind Over Matter, and discussing the impact of mental health on our students. And he's got, I think it's going to be a very interesting part to the book, is he's got, I think it's 6 interviewees or 6 transcripts from other contributors. Maybe it's only 5. Let me just double check.
5, yes, I think.
5.
Yes, 5.
5 contributors.
Tanya Byron, Dr. Ken McLaughlin, Natasha Devon, MBE, Claire Fox, and the Right Honourable Norman Lamb.
Oh, and it's 6, because guess who else has got to get his nose in? Tom Bennett. Yep. So,
right.
Yep.
He's not listed, is he?
Yes,
he is. Sorry. Yes, he is at the bottom. I saw the first page.
Yeah, it's 6. So Tom Bennett's in there as well, waxing lyrical about mental health too. So it'll be interesting because there'll be some conflicting views there, I think, from those contributors. He's talking about it from the point of view of mindfulness and growth mindset. He's looking into what it's like to be a head teacher, looking after students with difficulties in their lives. He's looking at it from the point of view of whether or not the things that we do in school outside of the education we're providing to our students is helping, and how can we help, and how can we make things better within schools. And
I want to do a separate program on this because I know a couple of teachers who have been working in this area and who have experienced mental health. And I think if we go gently, we could ask people to give their experiences with teaching and mental health, as opposed to not only students but also from the teacher's viewpoint as well.
I mean, obviously John's talking about this as much from a national perspective as well as his own perspective within school. He sits on the City of York's CAMS executive and so is very much involved in mental health within the city. So it looks to me like he's put together a very comprehensive overview of the state of play of mental health in schools and mental health for young children. Hats off to him because it's a very difficult subject to navigate. It's a very difficult time for people with mental health problems in schools at the moment because so much funding has been taken away from schools and outside schools, external agencies like CAMS. The funding and the waiting lists that these services have, as the funding's dropped off and the waiting lists are growing longer and longer and longer. So a timely book from John. I
think generally services are being cut back a lot anyway, so this is going to be probably at the bottom of the queue.
I mean, interestingly, you say that, but the Schools Week edition this week, I've just received it today. The front page is an investigation into mental health, responding to Theresa May's announcement to deliver mental health first aid training to a staff member in every secondary school by 2020. But of course, that's not necessarily dealing with the problem. That's to help people identify students with mental health. And the editor of Schools Week, Laura McInerney, makes that point in her editorial. She's saying that Theresa May's made this announcement with the package of schools, and perfectly right to highlight this issue. Theresa May's definitely recognising it, but is the package that's being provided going to solve the problem? It seems to Laura that it's actually just really going to help people identify students with mental health.
Yeah, it's like if you have a triage, and what can you do afterwards? Nothing.
Absolutely. The funding for the services that those children then need to access is what's missing. And the bottom line is, unless funding is made available for mental health services and social care services, we can identify these kids, but there's very little we can do for them. So that's where the funding needs to be. We'll see. I'm going to enjoy reading John's book. I'm sure it'll be a very difficult subject, but he writes very well and very easy to read. So in a future episode, we should do a review of it.
Try and get him to give us an interview would be nice.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. There we go. There's a little bit about a book that's available, I think, this or next week. So look out for it. It's called This Much I Know About Mind Over Matter, Improving Mental Health, in Our Schools by John Tomsett.
Right, tell us about these knowledge organisers. I've been following this as well, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say first.
No. Before we do that, Leon, let's get these resolutions out of the way.
Oh, right. Okay. All right.
Go on. What are your New Year's resolutions?
Well, my New Year's resolutions, they've gone back. I never used to keep them, but as I sort of got older and my body is falling apart, I had a lot of kidney trouble about 2 years ago. I gave up tea 2 years ago.
Tea?
And, tea, because it's diuretic and it makes you want to run to the loo. And coffee the next year, and both I've kept off. All I drink now is hot lemon drinks. That's all I drink. Maybe the odd hot chocolate once in a blue moon. And it's made a marvellous difference. So this year I decided, because I'd put so much weight on, because I'd be sitting there after this operation I had on my head.
Your head's looking much better, by the way.
Yeah, well, you can only see half of it, but it still looks like there's a big chunk out of it. But I decided I'd get the weight off quite quickly and get back to where I was and then take even more off. So I've decided to run or jog walk, I'll call it, for an hour every day.
Right.
And swim for an hour every day, which I have kept up.
Right.
So far. So I've taken a stone off already, so that's good.
Well done.
But what's been driving me bloody mad is it's so boring. So what I decided to do is to listen to an audiobook while I'm jogging and walking.
Very good.
But Donald Clark then had a good review about this book called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer about memorization.
Okay, yeah.
Or memory palaces. So, even I'm very loath because I'm very bad at memorizing. I always have been. And I've always used to I won't go into it, but I had a secondary school where you had to memorize stuff, and it was the bane of my life. I
Right,
really
okay.
hated it.
It
But
wasn't your thing.
Wasn't my thing, but I do like poetry. So I've been taking to memorizing poems while I swim so that I can keep the poems in my head. And so far, I've only got half a poem after 2 weeks. It's dreadful. It's really bad. And so I hope to build up a whole anthology in my head while I'm swimming. So when I swim for an hour, I don't have to worry about being bored, basically. And so that has been a lot better, and that's been really good. And then I only eat one meal a day on top of that, and it does seem to work. It seemed to have sort of helped enormously.
Let me get this straight. No tea. No coffee.
Oh, that's legacy from 2 years back.
Okay, but you're still going with them. You eat one meal a day.
Yeah.
You're running and walking. What did you say, for an hour a day?
An hour a day, 6 kilometers.
You're swimming for an hour a day. You're memorizing poems. This is the new you, is it?
It's the new me. Yes,
wow.
Definitely.
Okay.
I've made a lifestyle change, I think, really, because before, when I was eating too much food, I was falling asleep all the time. I think I was borderline diabetic because I have a history of diabetes in my family. So this is quite a good counter to that, really. I'm not sleepy at all now. It's amazing, despite all the exercise. It's incredible.
That's brilliant. Well, you're looking well, I have to say.
Yeah, I feel a lot better.
So they're your resolutions, are they? Do you have any others?
Not really. They're sort of ones that I probably won't be able to keep. But those are the main ones. I think that's enough, don't you?
I do, but make me feel better. Which ones do you not think you'll keep?
I think the ones I won't keep. No, actually, I think I'll stick to them all.
Well,
really.
Go on, one more.
No, that's it. I think I'll stick to them all because at my stage of life, it's really, you've got to make this lifestyle change. Otherwise, you're going to suffer for it 4 years down the road or 5 years down the road.
You are getting on a bit, yeah. Okay, so here we go. These are my resolutions, and I'll tell you how well I'm getting on with them. Resolution 1. Lose some weight. But that's not really a resolution, that's a goal. But in order to lose that weight, I'm re-putting myself on the 5-2 diet.
Right.
You're eating one meal a day. I don't think I can cope with that, but I do think I can cope with that twice a week. So 5-2 diet for me. It hasn't started yet. No, I've done one low day, so one low calorie day so far since the new year. What date are we on? The 13th. Okay, so fail there.
Friday the 13th, yeah.
Okay, the second one is I intend to run twice a week, 5 kilometres. Not very far at all, really, but
it's good.
Do 2 5-kilometre runs. So far, I've done one 3-kilometre run. So this is going really well. It was very icy, in my defence. The reason why I only did 3 kilometres, I set off early. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. There was ice all over the roads. I was slipping around everywhere, so I gave up. And I haven't put the running shoes on again since. That was last weekend. So maybe this weekend I'll go out for another 2 runs. This is where it's definitely not going to happen. Resolution number 3 is I'm not going to go on Twitter after 10 p.m.
Yes, that's almost impossible, isn't it?
I don't think I've succeeded once in the 13 days since the new year with that resolution. So, yeah, big, massive, fat fail for Mr. Weatherall there. And then the last one was to get to bed and to get to sleep before a reasonable hour. And that's not going very well either.
That's interesting because, it is kind of linked to Twitter, isn't it? Because I found that I've been trying to cut down my Twitter, but I'm not turning it into a resolution. Because my partner, she just cuts off at a certain time and will go to bed. Mm-hmm. And she will read before going to bed. So, she's lucky enough to we've got a private library near us, which is a lovely library.
Yeah.
And she's reading her way through all the 19th century books. in the library, just out of interest.
Mm-hmm.
She finds it historically quite interesting, and what it does is it just calms her down and she falls asleep and she's fine.
Yep.
If I go onto Twitter again after 10 or after 9, I just get sucked into that vortex of distraction.
Right.
And rabbit holes all over the place. You get these sort of little wormholes from one thing to another as you do. And you just don't, you find it's 11 o'clock, 11:30 before you've got off it, you know. And I try to read now instead.
Well, last Sunday, I don't mind people knowing this. It's quite terrible, really. Was it Sunday, or was it? It doesn't matter. One night, it must have been middle of the week. A few difficult things at school this week, but not going to those. But this week was I got home, and I think I must have just sat on the sofa with my phone in front of me, just doing the swipe up and down, the odd chip into Twitter, and all of a sudden it was 11:30, and I realised I'd been there since Becky had gone upstairs to look after our little one who'd woken up. I'd been there 3 hours, and I literally, that's all I'd done. I hadn't looked at anything.
I'm surprised you didn't come down and hoik you out, actually.
We have this signal system. I get the odd rap on the floor from the bedroom above. This bang bang bang. So get upstairs. Anyway, so the bottom line was that actually shocked me this week, that I had literally just sat there, zoned out, not in front of the TV. The thing was, I had a couple of things that I quite fancied watching as well. A documentary I'd looked. I had a few audiobooks I wanted to listen to. I have a pile of 5 books. That's my last resolution I'll talk to you about. I had some books on the side of my bed that I wanted to listen to, and to read, and I could have done any of those, and instead I sat there with that infernal device in front of me, with the light glaring at me, the blue light saying, stay awake, stay awake. And 3 hours just literally zoned out, just looking, going. And was it of any interest? Probably very little of it. Mainly people moaning about Trump or Brexit, people having a complaint about knowledge organisers probably, and so on. It was a waste of 3 hours of my life. And so I'm not going to come off Twitter. I get loads out of it, but I do not want to have a session like that again. That was just utterly ridiculous. And it doesn't set you up for the next day. You're tired. You're feeling lethargic. I did feel like I needed to zone out, and that was probably why I did it, but these things happen.
Yeah, I mean, reading a book slows time down, and so does, actually, funny enough, all the memorising I've been doing slows time down. Mm-hmm. It actually does slow everything down, whereas Twitter speeds time up.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's odd.
So my last resolution is I'm going to try and get through a book a week. I don't think I'll make it, but I'm going to set it to that. And we'll come on to that in a little while, Leon. I think you wanted to talk about teachers accessing books. I have a pile of books on my bed, by my bedside table. I'm going to keep 5 books on my bedside table, and I'm going to work through them. I might change books. I might swap backwards and forwards. I quite often do that. If I am reading, I'll dip in and out of one book and then go into another one. It seems to be the way my brain works, rather than finish one and then do another. But I am planning on getting through as many books as I can this year, because I think that is one of the things that I used to read all the time, and before I became a teacher I read and read and read. When my wife and I went travelling, I think I got through a book every 2 days. I had, it was a voracious appetite for reading at that stage. And I think, I'm a parent now, so there's less, you're more tired then. But my reading has been substituted for reading Twitter timelines
or marking
or planning or anything like that. So I think it's time to redress the balance of how I occupy my brain as much as anything else. Never mind coming off Twitter or anything like that. I'm not going to do that. I enjoy it, but I need to occupy my brain in a different way this year, and hopefully that will mean that I can think about things a little more differently. Sleep better.
You do sleep better after you've read something.
I think
so. The thing is, with all this training, I mean, even though I'm running an hour a day and listening to an audible book basically, or a spoken word book, I still don't get through a book a week. It's taking me, a couple of weeks to get through a book.
Well, I'm going to include reading to my children occasionally. So if
yes.
if I read Matilda, which is a bit thinner than your average book, then I might get through that quite easily. So there we go. That's cheating, I know, but I will count that.
But I mean, because of this is something that seriously need to consider, because as I have been reading Daisy Christodoulou's book, Making Good Progress this week, and I, am not working at the moment. All my work comes at the end of this month, and I can't get through that book in 1 week. I've been taking notes, sitting down. Mind you, I do sort of take all the references and sub-references, and put them all in databases.
You're not just reading, are you? You're actively processing the book as well as reading. You're processing it in other ways, so that slows you down. But it's 208 pages. If you exclude the
and I've speed read most of it, but then I'm having to go back and I'm making notes on specific parts, but I don't know how anyone who's teaching full time can get through all these books.
No.
I mean, let alone write them. Either they must have a very, very light marking load, or they must be part-time, or something else is going on, because basically I couldn't do it if I was teaching full-time.
I don't know. I think a lot of people must have a lot of discipline to do it. I think you need a lot of discipline. If you're writing a book, I think you just have to pick a number of words to do a day. You tackle it a little bit at a time. Writing a book obviously takes a lot longer than reading a book, but there's the research you have to do. All these education books now, John's seems to have it, Daisy certainly does. At the end of every chapter, she's got notes about where she's got particular ideas from, and so on. The books that we've reviewed very recently, the psychology book from David and Nick, have copious amount of references. We've got Lucy Crahan's Cleverland's book that we'll be reviewing soon. It's kind of biographical in that it's her journey, so she's experienced it, but she's had to do loads of research on that as well. No, that's probably taken her about a year to do, but as you were saying, that's been her full-time. This is what she's doing. Teachers that manage to do this, like John, a head teacher, how he's managed to write in the last 2 years 2 books. 2 to 3 years, he's written 2 books. I don't know. I've got a few friends that have written books, and whilst they were teaching, one of them was part-time and was able to write a book. I know. I don't know how a full-time teacher does it. Maybe we should ask some of them how they managed to do it.
To read it, I think, to read them as copiously as they can.
To read and to write,
or just to read. I mean, just to read the books. I mean, I'd be interested to know if people just read sections or parts of the book, or they read it from cover to cover, or they're familiar with certain things. Oh, there goes your half an hour cuckoo marker.
Absolutely. It's telling us it's 11.
That's something we could throw out to people if they want to feed back to the hashtag #TheEdFiles.
Yeah, please.
If you read a lot of books, how do you do it? Is it discipline? Is it you've got a low marking threshold? Is it because you're part-time, or is it just that you're very, very disciplined and you get up at 5:30 in the morning and you read 2 chapters, and then you go in and do your planning, and then you do the teaching, and then you come home and you do your marking, and then you read a bit more?
What does amaze me is
don't have children.
Yeah, maybe. What does amaze me is the amount of people who read and are on Twitter, and their usage of Twitter is obviously not 3 hours a night as mine was this week. But yeah, anyway, we should put a poll out. I think a little survey, get some feedback, because I'd love to know, because people are reading these books. They're certainly buying them. Cleverland's shot up the bestseller list across, not just in education books. It was right up there over Christmas. It did. She's done really well there, Lucy.
Being mentioned by the OECD. I think they actually commissioned part of it, didn't they?
Yeah, and that is going to help. But wow, it was a good result there. Yeah, so good. So I think we've covered our resolutions. What do you think? I believe that you will do better with your resolutions than I will with mine. I have this sense that you, Leon, when you set your mind to something, you like to complete it, whereas I set my mind to lots of things, and some of them are left undone. So
yeah, it's because you become quite distrait. This is the thing. You have to focus. That's the main thing.
Focus.
I know it's hard. I think because you're teaching all the time and you are so focused, so you just want to let go at certain times.
Yeah, you want to zone out, don't you?
Yeah, and have a bit of a buffer zone, really.
Do you know what I need, Leon? Some discipline. Some good old-fashioned discipline. That's what I need in my life.
Well, that's another program, hopefully coming up.
Discipline.
So let's go on to just the discipline of knowledge and how to organise it.
Absolutely. So the big discussion over Christmas, and whenever teachers are off for more than one day, they, especially on the old Twitter sphere again, we like to have a good old natter about a subject, and hopefully it's all very collaborative and congenial. Is that the right word? We'll go with it. And nice, and everyone's being happy and pleasant. Sometimes we get a bit more argumentative, and there's comments flying one way or the other. The knowledge organisers discussion that happened probably just after the New Year, I think, was the former rather than the latter. The odd shot was fired across a few bows, but other than that, people, I think, were really interested in discussing them quite openly and how they might be used. This was kicked off, I think, by a blog post by a young man who's a primary teacher. His name is John Brunskill, and he writes a blog at pedfed.wordpress.com, and he shared a knowledge organiser that he prepared on the Apollo 11 mission to the moon, and this was to be used with his class. He was giving the knowledge organiser to his class. We'll put a link to the post in the show notes, but essentially, if I can describe to you what it looks like, you can imagine an A4 page being given out, a little table on it, and John split it up. It's got a nice heading, Apollo 11 mission to the moon. He split it up into main sections. The timeline of the events that include the mission to the moon, going from July 16th, 1969 to the arrival back of the astronauts back to America, and then even including the event in 2011 where they were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, the crew of Apollo 11. He's also got a section on the crew, who they were and what their jobs were, just very basic, their name and what their job was. Some quotations from the events, the Eagle has landed, one small step, etc. What the call signs were of the spacecraft. So interesting facts are included in there, how fast the rocket went and so on, and some core vocabulary. And I think, reading through John's post, the idea is that this information is available to the students whilst they're doing their work on the Apollo 11. They use the Apollo 11 as a theme for them to learn about other things. So they've been writing stories about the man on the moon. They've been learning about the solar system. It's there to provide a framework so that the teacher, John, has a reference of the keywords he's going to use, and so on, and the kids have access to the same information as well. So the debate goes, what are the students going to be doing with this information? Are they supposed to learn it? Are they supposed to use this information? Are they supposed to be able to recall all of this information? The timeline down the left looks like a series of dates and times that you might expect the kids to learn and be able to repeat back, maybe in a piece of written work or even in a test. Again, the quotations, you can expect that section might be used to discuss, well, what did that quotation mean? And if the students have the information in the knowledge organiser, is the teacher, is John, expecting them to also learn that and it be in their heads as well? Obviously, the vocabulary is very useful for a student to learn and to have in their heads. What the word crew means, for example, would be a word that you would want a student to either, if they didn't know, to know and understand when having discussions about this topic. So all in all, the actual organiser, I think, is a useful tool. The question mark and the discussions that were going on about it as well, okay, well, what are the organisers being used for? So I don't know what you think about knowledge organisers, Leon?
Well, it sort of, you had a response from Sue Cowley on her blog, and then you had a response to that, and it all sort of kicked off down a rabbit hole that really I don't want to go into in this particular podcast. But basically, I think they're useful as a starting point. But if you put them up there for people to memorize, you have to ask yourself, and this came out in Michael Tidd's blog as well, which we'll put a link to, is what are you memorizing? It's like, I did point out on Twitter that it's like in Lewis Carroll, there's a lot of things. The equator is an imaginary lion running around the world, around the earth. And where Alice gets all these facts absolutely wrong because she's either using puns or malapropisms, or she's remembered it wrong, or she's not sure exactly what this narrow band of knowledge is. Now, that's all it is. It's a narrow band of knowledge. And I did point to a website I wrote for the Franklin Museum and the Science Museums on the Apollo 10 re-entry capsule.
Yeah.
Because I was a science educator back in the noughties, just the last century and then into the noughties. I was doing, because we won the first STEM competition for websites in this country, because we did a museum visit. Because for years, I used to take kids to museums and they never did anything. They just passed through like a school of dolphins, or I don't know. They never seemed to sort of focus on anything. And it got me interested in how you focus in on learning materials in response to learning institutions like museums. So I wrote a whole history of astronomy linked to the narrative around the space capsule. And probably it had too much knowledge in it. But the knowledge that's, let's say for the Apollo 10, the knowledge organisers, some of that I would not be interested in teaching the children. I'd be more interested in things that were more expansive. For a start, do they know about acceleration and gravity? There's a lot of websites about gravity on other planets, So I would like to see, as well as that knowledge organiser, a load of resources linked to those facts.
Yeah.
Which
I
actually
agree.
flesh out. And he did say he'd get a friend in to pretend to be an astronaut, but you can actually, through Skype, join up Skype for Schools, and you probably could get hold of a real astronaut.
Oh, absolutely.
To talk to, which is more genuine and more authentic as well. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying it's a great starting point. But if you get them to memorize that, fine. But if that's the vast majority of the time that it's going to go on, and that narrow band is not expanded, so yes, as people say, a little bit of knowledge is great, then build on it. Build on it with substantial, contextual exemplars. And that has to be built in too. And I'm sure they are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't doubt for a second that John isn't sitting there with this knowledge organizer and going, right, guys, this is what you need to learn. And that,
no,
and
but my worry is, because he has only fleshed out a little bit of it, and he has expanded in further blogs, some teachers will sit down, quickly scan this and think, yeah, that's the answer. Just give them a set of very, very precise facts about this. They're quite arbitrary, in fact, if you look at it.
Yeah. And he's made the decision as the teacher of what sorts of things he's thought. I want them to learn. I would imagine.
Give them quizzes, give them pop quizzes or quizzes or whatever, and job done. Move on to the next thing. And that really isn't. That's not learning. It's learning in a very limited sense.
Michael makes this point in his blog about whether or not it's to be used as a test, or whether or not it's from a cramming point of view, or to look things up, or whether or not it's able to be used in spaced practice, in that visiting different topics and interleaving and going back and thinking about a topic and recalling a topic from further down the line, giving your brain a little bit of chance to forget and then remember. And Michael's concern was this maybe potentially goes against using that. Interestingly, I was rereading Joe Kirby's blog on this. Joe Kirby is an assistant head at Michaela, and he's done some work on knowledge organisers for a few years now, and they use them in Michaela for their year 7s. Same thing, pretty much the same setup as John had, to be honest. There's a timeline. If an item on one of the blogs he's written about them is about a unit on apartheid South Africa. So you've got a timeline, you've got, again, the vocabulary that's being used, including underlying common misspellings. Again, I can see that was very useful, actually. Who they were, who the activists were, again, some quotations and some more vocabulary. So, again, John, I think, has tried to use a similar sort of structure to that, but it's all just words in there, and that brought me on to something else that I saw. Oliver,
well, it's dual coding, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. In our episode last time, we were talking with Jana Weidstein about the areas of cognitive science that she's been researching and how students can learn, and one of them was dual coding. Now, a collaborator of Jana's is Oliver Cavalioli. He produces some, I'll call them informatics. He produces a lot of graphical based notes that help people understand the content from both a pictorial sense and including the literal sense, the context written down in words. Yeah. And he said that a knowledge organizer, or certainly a scheme of work, shouldn't just be a load of writing. There should be the links, there should be the concept maps between the two, which reminded me of work I'd started. There's another example of me starting and not finishing something. Work I'd started with Michael Slavinsky a few years ago about mapping concepts, mapping all the knowledge that we want to teach to our students. So I'm very much interested in this. I think Oliver is right. We need to move past just the basic lists of words, lists of facts written down. There might be some pictures involved. There might be a photograph. So the photograph perhaps of Neil Armstrong on the moon might help.
Yeah, I mean, when I did the website on Journey of the Apollo module, what I did was I traced NASA drawings of the modules. And you could move I remember having this conversation with Oliver a few months back, maybe a year or so back, where you could move your cursor over the module and up would come information about that module.
Absolutely.
So you had the words and the thing, plus lots of diagrams of the orbits, because it's all saying one thing, where you could actually click on the modules and it would tell you some information about that. So you're doing dual coding, and I was doing this 20 years ago, and it seems a no-brainer to do that. When you're creating resources.
I think you've hit on something that, again, if time was no object, never mind the money, but if time was no object, this would be exactly what I would want.
Well,
I
was just mad when I was doing it, because we're teaching full time as well, working till 2 a.m.
Well, it's the sort of thing that we have this technology. It's the internet. We have the technology. It's HTML. We have worldwide. We have web pages that are more than capable of producing a full multimedia experience. People worry about what apps they should use or what devices we should be making things for. As far as I'm concerned, all of this stuff that we're talking about should just be on a few websites in a well-organized way that we're all able to use as teachers, going all the way through.
People have been saying this for years. Maybe the difference now is maybe there should be a shout out to people like John and others who are creating these resources. Is, yes, put them up centrally, and then other people can build resources around them and have that. And yes, maybe write textbook pages, but put them online. Don't make them just books so that they're linear. And in that way, you can, or people can download them and photocopy them or print them out or whatever. But a repository. So if as the research is proving some of these things to be effective, and these methods, maybe it's time then to collate some of these things and put them together.
The resources.
In a structured way.
Absolutely.
And then link them. And I think science might be one of the best areas to go with to begin with, actually.
Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks to 2013 right now, Leon. So the 2013-14, I think it was 2014, Laura McInerney did her millionaire kind of what's the $1 million problems that we've got in education, and we were looking at how we define what a concept is and so on. It just feels like, in a way, we're going round and round in circles a little bit, but we need to keep moving forward on this. I agree with you, Leon. I think textbooks, it's not a case of either or. It's not a case of we have textbooks in the classroom or we have online resources. It's about that. We've got publishers that are spending vast amounts of money, and schools that are spending vast amounts of money on reproducing the same information again and again and again and again. You look through all the science textbooks that have existed since the last, in the last just even 10 years, but going back 20, 30 years, the content that is in those books is approximately the same. It's laid out differently. There are different contexts. Some courses, 21st century science, maybe goes down in a context-based theme. But the diagrams are all the same. The physics is all the same. The content, the definitions, the vocabulary is the same. There's no difference in all the basic stuff that we're now putting into knowledge organisers. All that information has been repeatedly put into books, put into different websites, put into YouTube videos, put into all these different things, and yet it's all disparate. It's all in all these different places.
But the interesting thing is, when I one of the jobs I did do was work for a big classical music media and film company, and the first thing I did was have a 3-day summit with 5 core music teachers, all recognised specialists in classical music, and we built a resource based on the videos that company had. And that I found was such a useful exercise. And it leads back now to the other thing you wanted to talk about the curriculum.
Yes.
Why do you get all these people in a room, for heaven's sakes, and just do it in that sense, and then put the hooks out if people want to add and sort of modulate or change or personalize or do what they want.
Yeah, let me tell you about the tweet, and we can maybe discuss it in terms of that. So a gentleman called Mike Ratcliffe, he'd actually been to the National Archives. None of this stuff is online that he posted. He posted a little just a picture of a paragraph about a number 10 advisor having a bit of a jaundiced view, this is a quote from his tweet, of the convoluted curriculum development plans from the Education Department. This isn't 2010-11, this is 1987. And this is what he said: the proposed curriculum commission is a hideous bureaucracy and a method by which the HMI and the teaching profession can sabotage the excellent idea of a core curriculum. There is no reason why a national core syllabus in history should not be written by an ad hoc group of, say, 3 professional historians and 3 teachers of history over a weekend. The same method could be replicated for every other subject. The Department of Education, DES, I don't know what the S stood for then at those days, but anyway, would then publish these as a paperback with introduction from the Secretary of State, and examining bodies could be asked to tender for setting national examinations to test attainment at different ages. The Curriculum Commission, I'm almost done. Curriculum Commission, better renamed the Curriculum Working Party, should then be no more than a few outsiders and a seconded DES official and secretary. The HMI will, of course, protest furiously at such an idea, as it will at once undermine their existing grip on the education process. And this was back in 1987.
And I've been teaching 8 years at that point. And it went from doorknob teaching, where you could just walk in and it's in your head and you didn't do any planning, to starting to bring in that core Kenneth Baker curriculum. So this was
Professor Brian Griffiths was the guy who I was quoting there. Jonathan Simons, He used to be PX Education Policy Exchange head of education there. He's now moved. He's now working for the Varkey Foundation. He posted it and said, interestingly enough, this was pretty much what the arguments were about the recent curriculum change, and that the DFE had a similar argument and viewpoint. Of course.
What's interesting is that the subject associations, I think, would get in the way. You see, that's where the bureaucracy falls down.
Yeah, you say get in the way, of course, because my response to that was...
Well, it's your pitch, isn't it? It's demarcation disputes that would arise, I should imagine.
Yeah, but the process, they tried to put this process into the curriculum development, and as I said, that's the process that gave us in the physics specification kinetic energy equals a half m acceleration squared instead of velocity squared. So, it's all very well saying that we need to just reduce it down to 3 professionals and three teachers in a room for a weekend, but I think we need a little bit more quality control than that, perhaps.
But then, see, it gets the more people you get involved, the sort of larger the bureaucracy. You should have your checks and balances like a Wikipedia
Absolutely.
type of thing.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Well, that was what happened with the specification that was put out by the DFE. The national curriculum with the mistakes was put out, and we essentially did correct it eventually through a social media process and blogging. Nagging. It took 2 years, but we got there. Yeah, so... it's interesting. The problem is you need people. You need enough people to be able to do the things we were just talking about.
Yeah, well, what you do then is you offer sabbaticals to people to do that, and you make sure they get them. And that is one thing that actually... And then you make it competitive to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. I think a teacher's lot should include time out of the classroom to do things like that.
Especially if you've done a lot of blogging and you're very knowledgeable on it.
Or even not. You might have a load of knowledge, but to have that opportunity, even if you haven't been passing it out to people through blogs or Twitter or whatever method you use, you may have this desire as part of your classroom practice to go and work with a publisher or go and work with a subject association or with a committee who are doing a working party, to use the term that was used in that quote, who are doing some work on curriculum design. You might want to give some input to that. Or you might want to write a textbook. Who knows? It's impossible to do that, I think, well, and to rely on the teachers to do that if they don't have the time to do it. It's not money, it's time.
It's time.
We don't have time to do all of these things. Some of us do. Some of us, again, going back to my discipline point of view, some of us are more disciplined than others and are able to write books as well alongside their teaching career. Amazing work that they do with them as well. Some of these education books that are coming out at the moment are so well researched and so well written. I'm seeing much improved literature for teachers.
Yeah, there's a new renaissance, isn't there? I
definitely think so. I think, and trainee teachers coming in now have a wealth. There always were loads of books that were out there, but
but not so many from practitioners and quoting recent developments and things like that.
Absolutely, well referenced, lots of research, etc. Yeah, I agree.
Right, so to move on from there, we've got carpet time, and this week it's going to be Emma Shepherd, who's going to be reviewing Doug Lemov's Teach Like a Champion 2.0, talking of sharing things.
Okay.
My name is Emma Shepherd and I'm a lead practitioner in English. I'm going to be reviewing Doug Lemov's Teach Like a Champion 2.0. Now, the first thing to note about this book is that it can't be simply read in isolation. It's essentially an instruction manual for a set of role-play activities to help teachers to practice important routines to perfect their classroom management. We're thinking about things like wait time, meeting, greeting a class, or activity transitions during lessons, which are really minute routines that Lemov suggests can be practiced over and over again, almost like a sports skill until they're perfect. So reading this book properly means actually putting these techniques into practice. And Lemov sets up these practice triads to do so, with one person acting as a teacher, one as a student, and the third person observing and giving feedback in very quick bursts of 30-second role play. There are also a set of videos online that exemplify each of the 62 techniques that Lemov has collected as he's gone round observing excellent teachers in the US. So I've used Teach Like a Champion when working with both large groups of trainee teachers and also one-to-one as a mentor. And it's a really effective approach for practicing these very minute 10 to 30 second skill sets that a lot of trainees struggle with when they're placed in front of a class in their first couple of terms. It's really great for building confidence and for making routines that a lot of more experienced teachers take for granted really explicit and hands-on, and ingraining the physicality and almost the sort of script of these techniques in new teachers. So it differs from some other books in that the theory really takes a back seat and anyone reading it is required to do rather than simply read. However, the book does come with a few caveats. The first thing is that a lot of trainee teachers don't really realise the importance of practising these techniques before they get into the classroom, and so sometimes find it difficult to see the point of this approach from Lemov until they can get they can't get their year 7 class to sit down or to move around without ensuing chaos. So this approach can sometimes feel patronising, and it's a very British thing really not to enjoy role play. It's also really important, therefore, if you're using this book as an ITT or CPD lead, to create a really safe space for new teachers and to use a little bit of dry humour, as well as to acknowledge the slightly uncomfortable thing that you're asking these teachers to do. Equally, the videos that accompany the text are very, very American. They can be found online. And again, this is quite off-putting for a British audience. So I watched them as a teacher trainer in order to check that I've understood the technique properly. But what I found was more successful was actually modelling the techniques myself in person in a way that was more authentic to my own teaching practice and more culturally appropriate to my British audience. The one thing, essentially, that almost every trainee teacher or NQT says when they speak about their first few terms in the classroom is that their teacher training, their provision at university, didn't provide them with enough hands-on training. So a book like Teach Like a Champion is a great guide to structure this practical training and embed these important routines into everyday practice.
Thank you, Emma, for that. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is the grammar schools are a distraction, says the new Chief Inspector of Schools. It's sort of the Telegraph introducing Amanda Spielman in some way, but she seems to get a bit of a stick just for saying, I'm not really interested in all those issues. Let's get on with the work, basically. Mm. And I'm sure Wilshaw said far worse than that.
Wilshaw said exactly the same thing, that he didn't think grammar schools were the problem that we needed to solve. I'm paraphrasing, but he made similar comments when he was head of Ofsted. But she's new in the job; they're going to pick up on it. Interestingly, the Telegraph are having a complaint about it, but it was a report in the Guardian. It was the interview in the Guardian where she made the comments. So the Telegraph are referring to that. So.
Well, they even quoted Wilshaw before he'd actually taken up the post of Ofsted. I mean, I think that Dirty Harry quote was before he'd actually taken up the post of Ofsted. So they will now be looking they'll be taking a fine tooth comb and a very big magnifying glass through anything she's ever said before and bringing that up out of context, possibly.
Okay, but imagine. You have MPs who are supporting grammar schools, clearly unhappy about the civil service, as they describe Amanda, displaying their ideological beliefs. Well, she didn't display her ideological beliefs. She just says it's not really part of our role, and we're not really interested in the grammar schools. It's not something that we want to pay any attention to, really. So that seems to be the comment that she was making.
Yeah, they've got the usual thing of saying her appointment to the $195,000 a year was opposed by teaching unions. It's a bit, we'll just prod you a bit to begin with. That easy meat.
Yeah, that reminds me actually of the small furore for, I think it was about 3 days, wasn't it, when she was interviewed by the Education Select Committee interviewed her, and the impression was, well, we're not very impressed.
She lacked passion.
Lacked vision and passion. And then, of course, she was. This is interesting because from my perspective, she seems to be the right person for the job. She's been working with a large chain of schools arc. She's got lots of experience with expertise in schools and processes and so on. Yes, she's not been a teacher. That doesn't necessarily mean that she's not a suitable person for inspecting schools. I don't know. I'm sure I don't agree with everything that Amanda Spielman thinks, but at the same time, she seems to be a person who will run Ofsted in a way that will be looking at research, will not be looking necessarily for the teachers to have teaching styles and that are approved by Ofsted in a similar way that Sean Harford has been banging on about for the last 3 or 4 years now. Those days are hopefully over. It's more about, are your schools doing a good job? Are they getting the results? Are they looking after the children effectively? And do the leadership team know what they're doing and know what's going on in the school?
I think the problem, I will say this categorically, I think the problem is the leadership teams in a lot of schools, in that they try to second guess what Ofsted is doing. So if Ofsted changed the game in terms of shortcutting that, which they are trying to do, and still people are holding on to their comfort blanket of supposedness about Ofsted, then we might actually start to come to a point where people actually take ownership and of their own destinies rather than having to worry about their destinies plotted out for them. Supposedly.
You see, I think there's plenty of head teachers who do feel like that. You know, that they don't hang off the latest.
Oh no, I'm not saying they're all like that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of head teachers are like that, unfortunately.
But
or staff or SLT maybe.
But is that down to recent experience? Is that down to experience of inspections past and so on? You know, and the fear of what might happen. There's the all competition of league tables. It's a real difficult one, isn't it? The one thing I do hope we get to see the back of very soon, and there's still reports of them happening quite regularly, is mocksteads and the idea of people coming in and being paid by schools, especially, and this point was made by Sean Harford, especially in these kind of straitened times where we have no money to pay for people to come into a school and do a test of the systems and make sure that everything's in place to wow and amaze the inspectors when the real ones come in. To my mind, unless you are absolutely confident that there's real problems in your school and you want a second opinion, you want people to come in and just help you.
Then buy someone in to actually do something practical.
Yeah.
That's got a sort of track record.
And don't get Ofsted inspectors in to do a mockstead. I don't think that's allowed anymore. So
thank goodness.
We've kind of veered away from the point, but I suppose we haven't really. We're talking about Amanda and her new role as the chief inspector for Ofsted.
It will be interesting to see how the organisation changes, or if there's any nuance in how things go about doing business, and that should be very interesting to look at. Now, the other thing I looked at was the Rachel de Souza's piece in the Telegraph, where she said it's time for the government refocuses. That's not really English, is it? It's time for the government refocuses its efforts on the free schools movement. That really doesn't seem like good grammar to me. Anyway.
Well, it is. Sorry, it is the Telegraph. So I like the fact that you've been reading the Telegraph so much this week. That's good on you. Widening your circle.
Well, no, I actually I have an RSS feed of all the actual. That's why you can be on Twitter less. I have an RSS feed of all the educational publications where I can get them still.
You nerd, you.
And I pull in the bits that I think interesting. Anyway, she talks about how we've not got the guts to we might have the guts that the States hasn't to follow through with the Common Core.
When she says we, who's she talking about?
Well, she's talking about herself and the parents she's talked to, and this is the problem I had with it. Really, the organisation that she is part of, which is the Parents and Teachers for Excellence. She's a founder, member of that. It looks like a thinly veiled lobby group for a certain way of doing things, despite the fact that we're talking about knowledge and all this being good. If it's prescribed in such a way that you don't have a choice in which to do it, and therefore you are not excellent, worries me. in that sense. So I put a few comments down in the comments section at the bottom, which still only has one comment, and within milliseconds it was whipped off by the mods.
Oh,
And
is this at the Telegraph?
This is the Telegraph. And so I pointed this out on Twitter, and a couple of people came back to me and said, "Oh, well, you know, what was it you said?" And I said what I said, and they said, "Well, that doesn't really seem to be..."
What did you say, Leon?
Well, I said it. I said basically in those words. That's exactly what I said. You know that.
What did you say? You haven't told us.
Well, I did say I felt it was a thinly veiled lobbying group.
Oh, I apologise.
Talking for that, but also the fact that.
Did you say the words AstroTurf?
I did use the word AstroTurf,
Oh.
and I think, but I'd actually what might have got me kicked off. I have read the community guidelines. Was I just included 2 URLs, and I often think mods don't like URLs in posts because they might lead to places that either offer services that people do not want, or lead to murky places that people would not want to go, and often they don't have the time to follow them up.
You should maybe try. You should maybe try again, but without the URLs.
Well, I couldn't be bothered really. After that, I was a bit just thought it would be good to talk about it on this show because this is our media, you know, and we can do what we want here. You know,
yeah, hang on. I think we should delete that entire section.
No,
moderated.
But I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But it does seem to me, as we covered in a previous show, that there are certain factors that make you, when someone claims to talk for others, and it's not really well documented, or we haven't got, it's a lobbying group, isn't it? And it's lobbying to get things done that you want done, and that's fair enough. If people want to do that, to lobby it, but don't say it's all parents saying this. It's just parents you've talked to who might be. It's like the Yes Minister sketch we did the other week as well.
Yeah.
That whole situation, come off it. Let's just say this is what we are. We want to lobby for this, and we think this should be the case. That's more honest.
Okay, and you're right. And the other side of the coin is maybe the head teachers roundtable. They are doing a similar thing, and they are effectively lobbying Parliament with their views and so on. So yeah, I think you're right to call it out and make sure that we are aware that
it might be that.
Yeah. Absolutely. What I like about that article, Leon, never mind all the text, this shows this is my learning style. It's not really, it was just I was distracted by the picture at the top. I am still trying to decipher what is going on in the picture at the top of that article. I will post it in the show notes. It's quite incredible. This is hopefully not going to be taught in secondary schools because it's indecipherable to me. I think there's,
what I always do with those pictures is I go to TinEye and do a reverse image search.
Yeah, I've just done it now.
Which I'm going to do now with you and just see how
let's see. Right, this is it. Where's this come from? The best. Oh goodness me!
There we go. 57 results, and it's Shutterstock. It's a stock image.
It's a stock image of drivel. Hang on. There's dollar signs, so it must be to do with economics.
It's got a guy. It's got a guy in front of it as well, waving with a sort of doing that. You know, that sort of Leonardo da Vinci circle with finger to thumb.
There's some
thing as well. So it's obviously a staged thing that someone's just put up.
I don't know. Maybe it is an economics lecture. I don't know. It feels slightly overwhelming to me. Put it this way.
The Telegraph do use stock images a lot.
It's not a knowledge organizer, that's for sure. URL in the show notes, people, so you can see what we're looking at. Basically, it's a blackboard of lots of squiggles.
Well, they look like pie charts and things, but they're probably simulacrums of.
Oh, I have no idea
charts,
what it is. It's all Greek to me. Anyway, moving on. I don't know. I think we're running out of time. I think we're going to have to leave AI pondering for another day. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a nice discussion, but I think we should leave it for another day because I am reading this book and this whole thing of AI does come into there as well. And I have got an Amazon Alexa. I have to.
Tell me about your.
Alexa. Not now. No, not now. Stop. If I say the name, it will will light up. And
Oh,
ask
is
me
it
things.
talking to you now? Tell me about your little bots that you have in your house. Go on.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I bought it because it was the cheap offer.
Uh-huh.
I'm a sucker for these things. And
Yeah.
also, I've noticed recently that AI has become a lot better. For example,
Look,
if you put up a YouTube video and
Yep.
you look at the transcript,
Yep.
it's much better than if it was
Yeah.
6 months ago. Things like that. But yeah, the Alexa is great. It's given me a new appreciation of music because I'm a Prime member on Amazon, so it will play music for me. It'll tell me the time. It'll turn on lights. I'm sad to say I have got switches for my lights in my house, and it will control my heating as well. if I
Wow, that
ask it
sounds
to.
good. Sounds amazing. It sounds like this is where you're getting all that extra time to go running.
But the interesting thing is that the article that Donald Clark on Plan B has about it, I would point people to that because he talks about some of the ways in which it could be used in education. Just a few thoughts off the top of his head.
Oh, well, we'll put that in the show notes. And I will just... The one point I just wanted to make when we talk about AI is there's two main strands to AI research. There's what's commonly seen in science fiction and fantasy comics, such as Ultron and the Avengers and machines taking over the world. That is a real concern. That's not just fiction. It's called the singularity. It's the idea that
Yes.
at some point we're going to have invented a technology as human beings that could, if we don't put the right safeguards in place, could have a malevolent effect on the human
It's a long
human
way
race.
off.
Maybe yes, maybe no. The point is that there's artificial intelligence comes in two flavors. It comes in the flavor of kind of that long way off, hopefully, autonomy that a computer has, that where it can basically act like an intelligent being. It can learn. It can do anything. If you see what I mean, it becomes a learner, a general purpose learner. And then there's the effect that we're seeing in the commercial AI world. So, for example, we've got our amazing self-driving cars. There's a brilliant video that came out this week of a Tesla. That's Elon Musk's flagship electric vehicle. Very expensive cars. I had a go in one at Christmas.
Ooh.
Actually. Amazing.
Who do you know that can afford one of them?
I won't mention who they are, but
It's not David Dido, is it? Sorry.
no, it's actually a member of my family.
Wow.
Yes, well, humble brag. Right. Anyway, moving on. So we went for a ride in that, and he was showing me the new upgrades. So these cars are amazing because you get the physical car, but the actual car itself is just like a tablet in a way, in that you get a new version. So you get a new version of the car. The car upgrades itself, and not the physical car. The physical car is manufactured,
It's firmware.
but because the software is able to do so many things, it actually improves the car, the ability of the car. It improves the efficiencies of the car. It improves the driver support of the car. They put in technology that they then don't turn on until they've developed the software to do it. It's quite incredible. But the one thing he showed me that they just put into the software for the car was this kind of one car ahead radar. So cars are able to detect the Tesla was able to detect the cars around it, and bikes, not humans. So if you're warm and fleshy, you're not detected by the car.
Mm-hmm.
But it is able to detect buses and cars and bikes. But what was amazing was they've developed a way of firing the radar underneath the car in front, so bouncing off the road in front and up, so that it can pick out the car one ahead. Now that I thought that was amazing. It could see the queue of traffic in front. But to show how amazing it is, and I'll put the link when I find it in the show notes. There's this video that came out this week of an accident was averted. Well, it was averted for the driver of the Tesla. The car spotted a tailgating car that was about to crash into traffic, stationary traffic ahead. So the Tesla was able to see the stationary traffic ahead, but that was completely obscured from the driver's vision. The driver couldn't see it because he had a big vehicle in front of him that braked, crashed into the car in front, flipped the car in front, and so there was a large accident between two vehicles in front of the Tesla. The amazing thing was the Tesla beeped and braked before there was an onboard camera, before the onboard camera had even seen any brake lights from the car in front. Wow. So if that had been a human driver in the Tesla driving the car, they would have crashed into the back of that car. There was absolutely no way. The speed they were going at, the distance that they were at, the sudden stop, the sudden crash, they would have ploughed into the back of this
I mean,
car.
They do say that in the future all lorry drivers' jobs are going to be going because of this sort of thing. Do you know what my favourite thing to do with an Alexa is?
Oh, yeah, back to your Alexa.
Yeah, my favourite thing to do is this. Alexa, tell me the 3 laws of robotics.
The laws of robotics are 0. A robot may not harm humanity, or, by inaction, allow humanity to come to harm. 1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
And there we have it.
Oh, I don't know if you're watching the video. I was sat there just going, wow, that's brilliant. That's amazing.
That's very nerdy. Right. I think we need to sort of put a cap on that, but we can't return to it.
We are going back to AI and education because I think it's a topic that we could witter on for a while about, and we know a few people who would love to talk about it as well, so we will be back to that. This was supposed to be a short New Year's kind of chit chat. Hi, welcome back. I think we should finish it off. We'll finish it off with the ASE conference that happened in January in Reading. A quick overview of that from me. I wasn't there. I seem to remember tweeting about it afterwards, saying that by all accounts the ASE conference was a big success and was only missing one thing, which was me. So it was the ASE is the Association for Science Education, and I think it was successfully attended. It goes on for 4 days over the course of the first week back after school. I didn't take any time off after school, and I made the decision this year that I wasn't going to go. I want to spend time with family still after Christmas. And that was my decision, but people did go that I know, and they said they got a lot out of it.
It's a shame they didn't audio record it or video record it.
Yeah, it's a comment that we discussed at the following Twitter chat, ASE chat, that happens every Monday. We did comment on that, and I think there's partly that an aspect of the association is thinking that they'd lose money because not everyone would want to come if it was all streamed. Right. I don't know. For me, you need to have at least some of the events filmed and streamed in order to advertise why you should go.
You could film them and release them afterwards rather than live stream.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be live streamed. Yeah, but again, that would be good. It'd be good for people like me who decided not to go. But of course, then that reduces the amount of footfall that the conference has, so it's swings and roundabouts really. I can understand them not filming every single thing, but I think some core aspects probably should be filmed and released. And the reason I say that is twofold: one, for the interest, but two, to get some context, because one of the things that was flagged up, and we'll put a link to the couple of blog posts that came up about this. One talk by Matthew, his surname escapes me. Well, we'll put it in the show notes, but he's the science guy from Ofsted, and he was giving a talk on science teaching from Ofsted's perspective and from inspections and so on. And there was one slide where he was referring to a recent report. I say recent, back in 2013, a report on what makes for excellent science teaching in schools. Obviously, it was a collation of Ofsted reports. They were looking at good outcomes in school and looking back at the comments in those reports. Now, that's like a red rag to a bull for some people, and possibly rightly, in that what we're doing there is we're flagging up to people. These are all the things that Ofsted's looking for. The people who are at the conference, who are at the talk, said that wasn't the context of the slide, but it nevertheless produced quite a lot of conversation and a blog or two about this, and some quite forthright discussions about it. We'll link to it was Greg Ashman's blog post about it. He'd had a discussion with Sean. He queried whether or not that was a helpful slide to have. And the reason why I mention it is back to this idea of videoing. If that talk had been videoed like we do in most of the research ed conferences that we do, you'd have seen the whole context of the talk, and you could have made a more informed decision as to whether or not.
That's precisely why I like to do long form video, where you have it from beginning to end, so you get the same experience as someone who's there, and you see all the context. You might not get all the nuance from the feeling in the room and things like that, but you do. You get the words of the speaker. You get the slides that prefaced, that came before and went after. You get the whole package, don't you? And I think it's far better to critique something like that where you've seen the whole talk. For example, all the Michaela video talks that you streamed last year, and the interview that I think we need to shy away a little bit from just using tweets as a form of as evidence. It is sound bites, and they are useful. We should be aiming to provide more links to the full picture wherever we can when we're engaging over social media. Of course, that's far be it for me to say Greg shouldn't have written his blog. He was probably making a very valid point about that particular resource, not from the perspective of whether Matthew was doing or saying the right thing, but in a way highlighting that, look, there's a picture in a tweet saying all these things. If that becomes a resource that's then used up and down schools, just even that slide, then that's not a good thing, So from that aspect, it's definitely worth flagging up. As I said, I wasn't able to go, but I did send. I say send. It's like I have minions. I don't. I did ask Helen Rogerson, who's H Rogerson on Twitter. I asked Helen if she would go and record a few responses from people. She's come back with 3, so we'll play them. We'll let you know. There's a very small sample of people. I think she saw them at lunchtime on Saturday. So a small sample of views about why the Association for Science Education conference this year in Reading was such a good and useful event. So we'll just play those for you now.
Today at the ASE conference, I've really enjoyed being able to speak to the exam boards and find out the answers to the questions, particularly to do with the new science GCSE, which we're just finding a tad confusing at the moment.
Okay, the key thing that I'm taking away from the ASE conference, which has come through from several things that I've been to, that science is a special thing done by ordinary people, and we really need to persuade our children that all of them can do science.
The thing I'm taking away from the ASE conference is 3 bags full of freebies. Why else do I come here?
The last one seemed a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I do wonder.
It's for the swag, Leon. It's for the swag.
Well, I've seen it a bit myself. Primary school teachers walking around with shopping trolleys. Basically, it's gonks and pencils and sweets, and they stock up for the next year. It's quite mercenary. Really.
Okay, then, Leon. I think that just about wraps it up. We've touched on AI, and we've talked about our resolutions. So let's have a good year, everybody. Good 2017. And we will see you back here in a couple of weeks' time. Leon, what's the next show going to be focused on?
The next show is going to be assessment, and there'll be some interesting interviews we'll be doing.
We will see you then, all about assessment. Bye-bye.
Bye now.